Impact Teams Radio. Welcome to Impact Teams Radio, the show where we explore what it takes to be a leader of the leaders in corporate America. Get ready to be inspired and discover proven tips for going from average to exceptional. Now, here's your host and guide, Tony Sherman.
Hello, and welcome to Impact Teams Radio. I'm your host, Tony Sherman, and today my guest is Fabio Agostini, the CIO of Silver Seas Cruises, and we're going to be talking about leadership, but specifically international leadership and leading from a different cultural perspective. But before we get into that, the first thing I'd like to do is say thank you very much to people who are leaving some great reviews on the iTunes. Somebody who signs themselves Terslip said, I really enjoy the great guests and Tony's interview style. The guests give great info on how to really lead today, and their information is relevant, and you can get and use it straight away. Plus, Tony has a way of drawing content. I love that, drawing content from them so that you can listen to true leaders teach. Don't miss an episode and become a subscriber and learn how to lead today. Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you very much, Tess, for the feedback. And as always, I would say if you like the show, if you want the show to succeed, please, we would really appreciate a feedback on iTunes or leave a comment on an episode, and we can use that as well. So that's it. So just to let you guys all know some success metrics, the last month's metrics come in, and we're averaging about 7,500 downloads an episode now. So that's about 30,000 downloads a month. So thank you, all the listeners out there, for your support. I really do appreciate it. And of course, without you, the show wouldn't be worth anything. So without further ado, let me introduce Fabio. Hello, Fabio. Well, thank you very much for coming.
Hello, Tony. Thank you to you, and great news from your side. I'm excited.
Well, actually, it's people like you that make it popular. I'm serious. We always get very, very good feedback when we have international guests, so I really do appreciate the fact it's a lot later where you are in Monaco than where I am in Boston, so thank you again for making the effort.
You're very welcome. I hope my English could be good enough for you and your listener.
Oh, you know it is, Fabio. You know it is. So we like to start off with something about our guests, that just to share a little bit about themselves. So do you have a favorite quote or a maxim that you live by as a leader?
Yes, Tony. I have many, but my favorite by far is willing is power. When you really want something, you always find a way to achieve it.
I remember when we were first discussing this, the other thing you said to me is power is nothing without control. Okay. So that sets up a very powerful picture, doesn't it?
Yes, you are right.
So willing is power, and power is nothing without control. So you got to want it, and you got to be focused and controlled to get it. I really do like that. Tell us how that informed. Well, in fact, before we do that, why don't I step back from the microphone, give you a minute or two, and just ask you, Fabio, to introduce yourself to our guests, tell them a little bit about yourself and who you are.
Okay, Tony, thank you. Now I am the Chief Information Officer of Silver Sea Cruises. Silver Sea Cruises is a small but very luxury cruise line and very well known in the world, at least in a certain segment. That's the luxury segment, travelers. And I was formerly CIO for another company 10 years ago in Italy, much smaller one, but quite interesting. In the meanwhile, I ran a business unit that care about business intelligence and CRM in a big international consulting firm, European one at origin. And before I ran my own business for another 10 years, we were a small software editors, but we did a lot of very interesting projects. So I'm a software developer, but I managed 100 people in my previous experience. And now I have 25 people, more or less, plus a lot of consultants and external suppliers. And I manage a very complex international world. Silver Sea is a small company. We are only 300 people shoreside, plus 2,000 shipside on our vessel, but we are spread in 3 continents and 7 different countries. And we have 8 ships that cruise all over the world in 7 continents, including Arctic and Antarctic, and many, many other wonderful places. And this makes it much more difficult than a big company because we do not have that much money. But still, we have the complexity of a very big international company.
That must set up its own challenges, actually, having that level, because that was a huge level of complexity that you laid out. And, of course, the whole thing is that every one of your customers gets a premium service and a premium experience. So doing that with a small budget must be very challenging.
Yeah, indeed it is. But we are smarter, so we try to manage it.
Well, you have to, don't you?
Yeah.
So if we step away from the present and I ask you to look back over your career, we always like to start with setting up a winning attitude here. So what would you say were one or two of the big wins in your career that you're really proud of?
That's a good question. I'm very proud. I'm one of the few people that really met the millennium bug causing the 2000 year. Because when I joined my previous company as a Chief Information Officer, it was 1998. And so we were all afraid at the time of the millennium bug. But unfortunately, we were one of the few that really got the millennium bug. And so I had to work 2 years just to change everything and to be sure that we can safely cross the 2000 years. So I set 2 different teams. We started replacing whatever we could replace, and I started 2 different teams. One was working on the system as they were, just to change and to make them compliant with 2000 year. And the other one was just in charge to replace everything and to make a plan to replace everything. Unfortunately, the 2 teams worked until October of 1999, and at the end, we got the final solution, and we understood that it was impossible to continue with our existing system. So we had 2 months just to change the last piece. The company had a very complex legacy system that ran all the business, and unfortunately, on the 1st of January, we had to issue 25% of our revenue in billings. And so we had to work day and night till the 1st of January, just to be sure that everything could work perfectly. Unfortunately, we completed it by 17th of January, but we did it, and that was a very, very, very big win.
Actually, it's really interesting to hear the way that you did a big win, because I know that I was also involved in the Millennium Bug thing, and a lot of companies poured millions, almost, across it, billions of dollars into the legacy systems. But it sounds like that when you came out of it, you actually came out with a new, more robust system. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to tell you another story that's quite interesting. The old system could not be able to make the 2000 year. But we need to be sure that we could check everything on the system. So we kept the system in a bubble, in a temporal bubble, for almost 1 year. And every evening we reset the date to 31st of December 1999. And that machine lived 1 whole year with the date set that way. And it was used just to check,
It's like putting it in suspended animation.
Yeah, correct. But the new system was much better than the previous one, because we did a lot of certificate. It was my company was equivalent of the under UL in USA. That's a certification authority for electrical appliance and ISO quality systems. And so we had millions of products certified, and we had to print all the certificate. In the past, they were printed by a legacy system that was mainly character-based. The new one was fully graphic. And so we printed from a blank sheet the whole certificate with all the logos, graphics, a picture of the products, etc., etc. So it was really exciting. We did not only change the system by January, but in 2 or 3 months, when you walked around the company and look at each desk, all the desk was full of very nice papers with a lot of pictures, colored one, etc., etc. So the new system was really much better than the previous one, but it was very hard, I have to say. During that big work, till we do not have time to eat, we had our colleague that bring to us food, beverage, and any kind of thing that can help us in our work to feel better, basically. It was a big team effort, not only from the IT team, but also from the whole company. It was an incredible experience. End of year eve, during the evening, I remember that we forgot to stop the procedure that reset the machine and the whole database every night. So I had to call immediately one of my system administrators just to tell him to stop the job, otherwise the next morning it will have destroyed the whole database and rebuilt it with the wrong date.
Oh,
last minute, really last minute. But we did it and everything worked perfectly, almost.
What I heard from there was a couple of good leadership lessons, and maybe you've got some more in there. But the couple of things that I took out of there was, as a leader, you had the vision not only to solve the perceived problem, but to make sure that the investment in solving the problem put you in a better position than you were already. And I think a lot of people miss that with the Y2K bug. And the other thing is, obviously, there was a lot of demand in that whole Y2K area for people working 7/24, pushing themselves. And you seem to have a system to make sure that your people were well fed and cared for, and you looked after the people side of the equation so they could maintain the productivity side of the equation. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, absolutely. I can even tell you how I try to manage that. The first thing that you need to give them is the example. That means that you should not leave before them. You should always be the first to come in the office and the last to leave the office after everyone else has finished his or her work. And that's number one. Number two, you should always talk to them. You should always take care of them. Number three, you should always try to give them good advices and be more prepared than them and very supportive and discuss with them any solution and convince them that this is the best and try to create a good atmosphere, solve conflicts and let them express themselves. It's tough.
That obviously was a large area. What are the stories of wins? I know we've got to be careful of time because we want to get through it, but this is interesting. So what other wins have you had in your career?
The other story that I can tell you is how I got really international in two different steps. The first step has been when I left my job as a CIO, I joined a new company, and the new company was Atos Origin, and it was an international company, but usually international company works very locally, so you have all the local office, but it's happened very seldom, to be honest, that you really start an international job. But I was lucky enough because when I joined the company, my boss at the time gave me an RFP, request for quotation, about an international project in France with L'Oréal, the big cosmetic company. Unfortunately, it was written in French that I do not speak. And so I said, but I don't speak French. And he told me, do your best. So I had to read the proposal and then to work on it, call all my international colleagues that I didn't know because it was just 1 month after I joined the company. And I have to arrange a team and prepare an answer for this RFP. And then we had to went to Paris just to win the project, and we had to defeat all the other competitors. At the end, we were only 2, and we went to Paris in the morning. The first company presented their proposal. In the afternoon, we did our proposal. On the flight back, when we had landed in Italy back, we got a phone call from the client that told us that we won the deal. That was the first step. After that, I have to manage an international project for 2 or 3 months, traveling a lot all over Europe. It was in 5 countries in Europe, all with different language, in Germany, in French, in UK, and in Spain. And so that was the first step. And so I built my first international network with those people. That was the first step. And the second one was when I finally left that company and I joined Silver Sea. And that was even more tough, to be honest. Tougher.
Right. In fact, one of our guests that we had a couple of months back said, the thing about working, especially in IT, on a national and international scope is all the easy jobs are gone now. They pay us to do the difficult stuff.
Unfortunately, yes, you are right. But it's also exciting, to be honest.
When you were doing those moves into the international arena, what sort of lessons did you learn personally that our guests would enjoy? What sort of lessons do you learn that you now apply into your leadership model?
Well, of course, the first one is important of foreign languages because, when you travel and when you have to manage an international team, unfortunately, you are English, so you do not have a lot of problem. But I am Italian, so I speak a very poor language or not very spread language. And so I had to express myself in a different language. But that's not the biggest difficulty because it's even worse when you have to deal with different cultures, especially in Europe, because, we in Europe are relatively small with as many people as USA, but We all speak different languages, so I had to one of the consultants was Dutch, and the other was French, some was German, some Spanish, some English, and they're all different. They have different cultures, completely different attitude, habits, etc., etc. And at the beginning, you meet a lot of foreign people on holidays usually, but it's not the same thing. You know, the attitude when you work is completely different. Hours, for example, in Italy we are used to work for a long time. In Germany at 5 p.m. they stop working and they go home, and that's pretty good for them. But they are very well organized, so you have to tell them exactly what they need to do, and they react exactly in the same way. In France it's completely different. In Spain you go for dinner at 9. And if you go in the office at 2, you won't find anyone 2 p.m. They are out for eating or sleeping, you know, the siesta. But they come in the morning and they stay very long in the evening. And they are very good workers, but with a different attitude with respect to other people. English are different. Americans are completely different. So that's another tough thing. But to be honest, the toughest thing in my last experience is the time zone. Attitude you can fix, but time zone is tough.
Yes, it is. It is. And in fact, I think we'll save that bit for the deep dive, because I do want to spend some time on that. So if those are some of the wins and lessons you had, share with us one of the struggles that you've had as you were growing as a leader.
It's very difficult to recover from failure and to find a way to recover bad things or to find a strategy to recover and to motivate your team after something that goes really wrong, when you really have to restart and to understand how you can really restart.
Have you actually had a project that totally tanked and then you had to re-energize and refocus your team then?
Yes, unfortunately I had, and to be honest, I have to say that was the most profitable project ever. The story is pretty simple. We started a very interesting project on HR crew management for a big cruise line, international one. And everything went well. We had a lot of problem. I had to spend a lot of money on that. The project was not very successful from a financial point of view, but everything seemed to work. We finished the project, we started the test, there was a parallel period of the old system and the new system. We started the parallel, everything seemed to go well. But 1 week before we really had to turn off the old system and turn on the new system, we immediately realized that something was not working pretty well. So at 1 week before the go-live date, we decided to stop everything, and then we had to do the post-mortem dump of the project just to understand the failure. So we closed all together in a room for 1 week, working day and night, just to analyze everything that went wrong. There were 3 companies involved in this. Mine was a company that did all the technical development. The customer, of course, gave the specs for the whole system, but there was another company in the middle that prepared thousands of pages of documentation, and all the implementation was based on the documentation. We gave a lot of warning to the customer that the documentation was not so good, and at the end, the failure was exactly in the documentation. And so we were not given responsibility for that failure. But after that, we had to manage a complete disaster and find a way just to recover and restart this project. So I had to change my team, try to let's say, cure the old team from this failure, find a new one, and invent with them a solution that could really solve the problem and convince the customer that that was a good solution. So we worked 1 month, day and night, just to prepare a prototype with a designer that we thought was good for the system, not only from a technical point of view, but also from a functional point of view. And then we presented everything to the customer, and we won back the project to remake the system. At the end, they decided to put or to give the analysis of the system again to another big consultancy company. It was Accenture, by the way, And we redid the technical implementation. It took another 6 months, but at the end, the system went successfully live, and that was a big win again, but after an horrible defeat. That was the worst period of my life, to be honest. The only project in my life that I didn't saw going in production really well.
So when you did the second implementation and you got to the point when you were going live, it must have been very, very tense for your team because you'd have failed once. You then had to remotivate them, do the prototype, then do the 6 months of rework, and then because you, again, had another person in the middle, there's always the fear that they will have failed this time. How did you handle that kind of fear and stress?
First of all, we completely changed the approach. In the first project, I had 20 people working on the project, and we continued to put more people on every side just to be sure that we could make it on time, and that was a complete disaster. For the new one, I changed completely the strategy, and so I choose the best person that I have in my team. I can tell you a story later about this person, and we choose very few selected people one by one, the best that we could find for each piece that we had to develop, and we rebuilt the system in 5 instead of 20, and we manage all the steps. We simplify everything. We use a framework-based approach instead of a pure programming approach. It was a big system, hundreds of web pages and complex procedures. We segregate the team. We had 1 or 2 persons working on the back end, 2 persons working on the front end, and 1 to make tests, more or less, plus me that gave all the direction and did a lot of technical work too, because at the time I had to check everything and be really sure that everything worked well. We changed a lot of persons before we find the proper one. And at the end, we were very stressed, especially by the customer, because, it's difficult. And by the way, usually when you fail a project, or when a project starts to go bad, instead of doing 1 steering committee per month, you start doing 1 steering committee per week and then 1 per day. And every day. And after a failure, of course, you don't manage loosely the project, but you manage it in a very strict way. So for the second implementation, we had a periodical check. We checked everything, and the customer was very, very, very requesting, and the company that did the analysis too. But it was a good team anyway, and the atmosphere was very good. The project manager changed also on the customer side. It was an excellent person, a very, very smart one. And so the team was really incredible, and we did it. And to be honest, we work all with the 2 vice presidents, the HR vice president of the company, and the IT vice president of the company. That was another excellent person, and we made really a dream team, to be honest. And at the end, we were very worried, but everything went perfect that time.
Right, okay. So actually, I've just looked down the clock. We are way over time here, Fabio, but I don't want to leave without asking you to step back over your career. We've heard some of your wins, we've heard some of your struggles, and the fact that you not only, your failure. I love the fact that in the failure, you didn't take defeat, but you sat down, you looked at it, and you said, okay, how can we make this better? And the interesting thing was you built a hot team of really core the best of the best, rather than making a bigger team and putting more people on it. And I found that really insightful. But before we leave, what I would like to do is ask you, when you look over leadership, how did you become the leader you are today? Did you have any mentors? What kind of things do you look for in a leader? Just for our listeners to learn about leadership, how did you grow as a leader, and what kind of metrics do you look for in leadership yourself?
Absolutely. I had many mentors, and I tried to learn from every person that I meet in my life, of course, but some were more important than others. I remember the first one, when I did my alternative service to the army, that at the time was in Italy. I met a person that was really incredible, and that teach me everything about teaching. And I think it was a very, very, very good experience, because he teach me how to teach other people different things, and not only technical one, but also attitude, culture, and things like this. He explained to me the difference between training and education, and I worked a lot with what I learned from this guy. Unfortunately, he's dead, but he was really an impressive person.
Okay, and I noticed in one of the notes that you sent me that you said one of your bosses taught you that better or perfect is the enemy of good.
Absolutely. That was the one that taught me not to focus on every single detail and not to try to do everything at the best, but just try to do something really good and something really perfect, but meet the overall goal. That's much more important than doing everything perfect. Otherwise, you will never succeed.
Yes, in fact, over in America, there's a guy called Seth Godin that everybody likes, and he always says, make sure that you can ship it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be shippable. And I like that approach.
Absolutely, on time and with good enough quality.
Yes, exactly. So I think that's all we've got time for in this episode. So I want to thank you very much for being our guest today, Fabio.
Thank you, Tony.
Okay, and this is Tony Sherman from Impact Teams Radio. Thank you very much for listening, and tune in a couple of weeks' time when we will meet with Fabio again for a deep dive into some of his ideas to look at the difference in doing cross-cultural business. Until then, this is Tony Sherman signing off.
That's it for this week. Thank you for listening. Now go and apply these few gems. Make the wisdom you have heard your own. If you want to be part of our launch success, then please go to impactteamsradio.com/love and tell the world. If you want more and never want to miss a beat, please go to impactteamsradio.com/subscribe. If you have 3 minutes, we would love to see a positive review on iTunes. And until next time, remember to act on what you've learned, and you'll be ahead of most of the world. Impact Teams Radio.